Hapaday, hello and welcome to the 7th gathering of the Climate Strong Islands Network. My name is Kyle Mandapat and I'm coming to you live and direct from the University of Guam Center for Island Sustainability. Today, oceans don't divide us, they connect us, and it's an honor to be a part of this amazing network, working to make amazing things happen for our planet, our people, and our future. Let's begin by first welcoming everybody who's joining us, of course, via our digital platforms. Thank you so much. And hopefully you're awake in your neck of the woods, right? As we continue to kind of bridge this gap with technology by our side. It's time to move on to our first item on our list today. Please welcome for our look at the state of the network, our Climate Strong Islands Network Steering Committee Co-Chair, Dr. Lirio Marquez.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you very much, Kyle. Buenas noches, good evening, or buenos dias, good morning. Wherever you are in the world, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Climate Strong Islands Network 7th Biannual Gathering. I am Lirio Marquez Dacunti, Executive Director of the Vieques Conservation and Historical Trust and co-chair of the Climate Strong Islands Network. First of all, I want to thank the Ocean Foundation and the Global Islands Partnership for being the network's co-hosts. I also want to thank the New York Community Trust for funding this network of diverse islands under the jurisdiction of the US. And I wish to convey a special thank you to the University of Guam for once again hosting this virtual event. Wonderful women and men who do excellent work and have the technical expertise to always make us look good. Last but not least, I thank you all for joining us tonight. On behalf of the Climate Strong Islands Network, I wish to convey our heartfelt solidarity to all the persons and communities that have suffered from climate-related disasters this year, anywhere in the world. They are many, and many of them face a slow and painful recovery. Our hearts go out to you. This year, the effects of the planet's changing climate have been countless and noticeable. Extreme temperatures causing heat indexes of over 100 degrees Fahrenheit all over the world, breaking historical records and in some places lasting longer than ever. Droughts leaving communities without drinking or irrigation water and causing dramatic loss of food crops. Extreme multi-day rains causing severe flooding, landslides, loss of lives and property, contaminating drinking water supplies, and leaving thousands without electricity. Stronger hurricanes and typhoons that develop and strengthen in never before seen timeframes, like Category 4 Hurricane Ian last month, Super Typhoon Hinan Nor in March, and Typhoon Merbok that hit Western Alaska in September. And what is even more astounding, Atlantic cyclones that maintain their tropical characteristics and strength all the way up north to Canada or Europe. This year's cyclones and rain have resulted in serious impacts to marine ecosystems. Sediments, chemical contamination, and untreated wastewater have reached the sea in large amounts because of all the flooding. Dramatic changes in ocean temperatures have impacted coastal ecosystems and organisms. Higher ocean temperatures impact corals in tropical waters, producing coral bleaching and disease. Episodes of ocean water cooling have also produced changes. For instance, Hurricane Fiona lowered ocean temperatures in the eastern coast of Canada, with a visible impact on coastal sea life in Newfoundland. This is something that's never been seen before. Forest fires have decimated thousands of hectares. Avalanches have caused by melting glaciers have wiped whole towns. The effects of climate change have been felt all over the planet. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has stated that weather-related disasters will increase in both frequency and intensity. These events if not addressed promptly and properly, will mean important hardships for communities, economies, ecosystems, and global health. Islands, even if they are in different hemispheres or latitudes, because of their isolation and small land area, will be more significantly impacted. It is in our hands to educate decision makers to act. Islands have a wealth of traditional wisdom, creativity, dedication, and commitment to face this climatic emergency. All over the world, islands are sharing solutions, knowledge, and information. And that is the reason for being of this network. Composed of a diversity of US islands, we are an island state, island territories with varying governance relationships with the US, islands governed by a tribal government, and island counties or cities within states. Our range goes all the way from the Pacific to Alaska, to both coasts of the lower 48, the Great Lakes region, and the Caribbean. Though through this network, we aim to transfer knowledge and skills between island partners to solve environmental problems in unique island ways. We seek to open the doors to island community participation in the decision-making process over issues that affect us, and to generate resources and attention to our islands. But probably the most crucial issue that this network works for is to advocate for policy and legislation that addresses the needs and singularities of US islands. And with that thought, I leave you with Matt Mullen and Nora Carlos from High Street Strategies, who will give you an update on our National Policy Framework, a document born of the similar challenges that US islands face when addressing climate change from within our different and diverse governance frameworks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lirio. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Mullen with High Street Strategies, and this is my colleague, Nora Carlos. High Street Strategies is a consulting firm based in Washington, D.C., and we've been working with the Climate Strong Islands Network for nearly 2 years now to develop a national policy framework that brings islands to become more climate resilient and to socialize that framework with decision makers in Washington, D.C. for U.S. islands. So Nora and I wanted to give you an update on where things stand with the National Policy Framework and a preview of where we plan to go for the rest of this year and into 2023. But before we do that, we wanted to review exactly what the National Policy Framework is and what it includes, and then tell you a little bit about what we've been up to this year. So if we could start the slideshow, we'll do a quick overview of the framework for those of you unfamiliar, and then we'll get into what we've done in 2022. So we'll go to the next slide. So the National Policy Framework was a collection of ideas that we solicited from all the members of the Climate Strong Islands Network and other participating islands throughout all of last year. And what they came up with were 7 shared issue areas among all islands of the US, no matter where they were located, about barriers and challenges in preventing them from becoming more climate resilient. The framework is structured in such that it outlines 7 issue areas, as you can see here. And each issue area is then broken down with a description of what the issue is and generally what needs to happen in order to enable islands to become more climate resilient. And then speaks to very specific policy recommendations for the US federal government, both the legislative branch and the executive branch, on what the government can do to help islands in the US become more climate resilient. A quick review of the framework here. You can see that the 7 commonly shared issue areas among all US islands are clean energy, watershed planning, food security, disaster preparedness, marine economy, waste management, and transportation. These issues are the issues that all islands shared to becoming more climate resilient. Some islands had other issues for sure, but these are the shared issues that we wanted to capture for the Climate Strong Islands Network National Policy Framework, and then provide specific policy recommendations. You can read more about the National Policy Framework and the specific recommendations on the Climate Strong Islands Network website. It is available there, and I encourage you to dive into it. The members of the Climate Strong Islands Network worked very, very hard to prepare this, and they did a great job. It is a very substantive piece of document. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll tell you a little bit about what we did once we created the actual National Policy Framework and had a document in hand. The next step, which occurred over most of this year, was to basically socialize the framework with a variety of decision makers within Washington, D.C. And beyond, to educate them and make them aware that this resource was available to them. And so that's effectively what we did over the last 9 or so months. We have gone around to various committees of jurisdiction in Congress and other caucuses, a collection of members of Congress that self-identify with a particular interest area. The House Committee of Natural Resources, the Senate Oceans Caucus, which is a bicameral caucus, both House and Senate members, both Republican and Democrat. We've also met with a variety of different federal agencies in the executive branch of the US federal government. And we've also met, just as of late, with certain individual offices that may or may not be a member of the Committee of Jurisdiction or these various caucuses that might have an interest in islands or some of the island issue areas. We've had several briefings and several meetings. Conversations have spanned the spectrum. They've gone really, really well. There is a growing interest, I would say, certainly within Congress and the Biden administration in the National Policy Framework. And we continue to have those conversations. So I think, Nora, why don't I hand it off to you, and you can tell the folks here a little bit about what we plan to do the remainder of 2022 and 2023, and then we'll hand it back over to Kyle. Nora?
Sounds good. Thanks, Matt. So if you would advance to the next slide. We still have a few months left of the 117th Congress. As you all know, we have midterm elections coming up. So both the House and the Senate are out right now, and they will be back in November. But basically what Matt just articulated and outlined is what we continue to do. So we are working with federal agencies. We're meeting with key offices and decision makers to let them know who CSIN is and to advocate for the policies that are outlined in the policy framework. What we've also done is we have mapped out each and every policy recommendation, and we have found what is the federal action that is necessary to make this policy recommendation a reality. So is that an earmark? Is that an appropriations ask? Is this legislative action that needs to take place? So after compiling all of those next steps for each and every policy recommendation, we've used that to kind of map out who we're going to reach out to and what our next steps are. So again, we're always looking for more opportunities to brief various caucuses and offices, as well as key members of the administration, be that at EPA, FEMA, Department of Energy, Department of Transportation, all of which link back to the National Policy Framework. As Matt said, we're going to keep identifying those different congressional champions. So maybe there's a member who represents islands, or perhaps there's a member who's really passionate about marine issues, and they might be able to champion some of our marine economy policy recommendations. And finally, we're looking to see what bills are already out there and where there are opportunities for us to fill a gap in legislation. So that's all ongoing this fall. It's October now. We have November and December. And then come January, the 117th Congress ends and the 118th Congress begins. So we are going to, kind of see who is on the roster, how those committees start to change. Perhaps we have different new ranking members, new members of leadership. So as we start to get that information in, then we're going to kind of redirect our plan and continue our plan of action. In addition, in the winter and even spring of 2023, we're also looking for opportunities to have more in-person meetings on the Hill and beyond. So one thing I know Matt has already shared with you to go back to the website. Mickey put it here in the chat. But what we would really love to hear from each and every one of you who are on the call tonight is to really take a look at that national policy framework and look at those policy recommendations. And my question to you is, which ones are most important to you in your island community right now? Matt and I really want to know, as does our policy subcommittee, because that can kind of help us prioritize which policy recommendations, which issue areas do islanders need the most help right now. So that's my ask of you tonight, is to take a look and let us know which policy recommendations are most relevant and important to you and your island communities. Thank you so much, Kyle. I'm going to hand it back over to you. Appreciate you all being here tonight. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much, Nora. We'll get working on our homework and hopefully we'll get it to you with reasonable time. Thank you for your address and for your updates this evening. Now, as we've mentioned countless times during previous gatherings, the work we do is strengthened by the hard work that friends and partners like Matt and Nora do for us and do with us, right? Our resolve of our collaborators, groups and people who share in our mission, bring new perspective, opportunities to the shores of our network of islands. Here for an update on partnerships, please welcome Climate Strong Islands Network Advisor, External Relations Officer from the Ocean Foundation, Mr. Jason Donofrio.
Hi, good evening, good morning to everyone, wherever you are in the world. We're very grateful for your time here today. We know that there's a lot going on in the world and on your island, and so we're grateful for you all participating tonight. We are also recording this, and so we'll be sending that out to everyone who couldn't attend but wants to get our updates as well. As many of you know, a network is only as strong as its members. And we really believe that at the Climate Strong Islands Network. We do have a fantastic steering committee spread throughout geographies across the US island space, but we are still constantly looking for more voices, more feedback, and your input on the direction of this network, and particularly the policy recommendations that are being put forth. To that end, we do have 3 subcommittees, and Jennifer is going to talk a little bit more about membership outreach. But one of the ways that we engage people is through the signatories of our declaration, which is really our founding principles and our guiding values that set the kind of rules of the road for who we are, what we believe in, and ultimately what we're trying to accomplish. I want to give a shout out. We have a couple of recent signatories on the line that I want to give a shout out to. I think I saw Aaron Darrington from CNMI that is on, and Governor Torres has signed that declaration, so we thank you. Also, Representative Sheila Babuda from CNMI is also on the line. So thank you for signing the declaration and for participating today. A couple of other signatories since the last time we did this update: the Bonbon Community Presidium, the Chain Block Company LLC, and Recovery Labs have all also signed the declaration. So what we're really trying to do is 2 things with our partnerships. Number 1 is to bring everyone into the network so they can access the full resources we have to offer. Sometimes this is financial. We do provide small dollar unrestricted grants to islanders to participate in the international dialogue and execute the great work that you're doing. So that is always an option. The other is to be a good convener. And we're grateful for opportunities like this to get together. But if you engage our steering committee, we are constantly figuring out how do we share lessons learned in an open source, equitable way, and in any way that we can bridge the gap between geographies, between island communities, we want to do that as well. So part of what we hope today is that you will take a look at the policy framework that has been developed. And to Nora's point, I would just reiterate that. Please take a look at that and tell us which one of these resonates most with you. What are you working on? This network is also intended not to duplicate efforts. So we want your feedback on things we're doing, but we also want to learn about what all of you are doing so that we can support you and not duplicate those efforts, but instead fill the gaps for U.S. island communities. So we encourage you to figure out what makes most sense. Please reach out to us. You're going to hear from Liz, our network facilitator, at the close of this meeting, and she is a great person to reach out to figure out where you may be able to plug in. But at the end of the day, our message is we want this to be a network for all U.S. islands and international communities. We want your feedback and participation. And we also want to know the great work you're doing so that we don't duplicate those efforts, but instead support them. Thank you all for your time. Kyle, back to you.
Thank you very much, Jason, for all the hard work you do. We appreciate you so much. Again, we want to make big shout outs to everybody who's tuning in and joining us from all over the globe. We mentioned earlier, aloha from our friends in Hawaii. We also want to say hapade and tiro to our friends out there in the CNMI. They're right over there. Can't see them from here, but I feel them in my heart. And of course, our friends from Puerto Rico, along with Palau, are represented in today's gathering too. Now, as we move through, I know we can't deny it. We've seen the news lately. All of our hearts and our prayers go out to the family and friends of Puerto Rico as they recover from the aftermath of Hurricane Fiona, along with all of our other partners and members and friends and fam throughout the country who are dealing with the natural climate disasters, as Dr. Lirio mentioned earlier. Now, as the community in Puerto Rico works towards getting things back to some kind of normal in the island paradise, work also continues in the field. It's time for our next speaker to join us. She brings a wealth of experience and history across the many fields of sustainability. She has worked in corporate social responsibility, public policy, environmental management, and is a LEED accredited professional for the development of green buildings. After serving in the mainland in support of countless environmental initiatives and groups, including time in the office of the New York Secretary of the Environment, she moved home to help move things forward in her native Puerto Rico. She now works to help things flow as the executive director of the Juan Bay Estuary Program from Estuario. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome CSIN Steering Committee member, Brenda Torres.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me well? Yes?
Yep, you sound great.
Perfect. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Lirio and Austin, for this great invitation. I appreciate it. Muchas gracias y quiero darle también la bienvenida a todos los puertorriqueños que están en esta conversación, porque veo muchos de ellos aquí. So I said in Spanish that I wanted to say thank you to those Puerto Ricans that tune in to learn more about the work that we've been doing. Thank you so much. As you mentioned, Kyle, I am the executive director of the Juan Bay Estuary Program. This is a nonprofit organization that is part of the National Estuary Programs. There are 28 National Estuary Programs in the United States, and Puerto Rico is the only tropical and outside of the continental US. So I'm happy to share with you the experience we've been having with the use of federal funds to support the recovery, restoration, and management of a restoration plan that we have in place. And I also wanted to put you in context, right? As you mentioned, and Leary also mentioned, we are constantly being in the process of fighting, the situation with the climate crisis that we are living. And for that reason, 5 years ago, we obtained approximately $80 billion from Congress through different federal agencies, basically assigned to Puerto Rico to support the recovery of the island. Of those, approximately $1.6 billion are assigned to, or have been committed actually, to the San Juan metropolitan region. And I sort of want to focus on the metropolitan region because that's really where I'm currently working at. But of course, whatever we do is totally replicable. So we support other watersheds and other leaders in Puerto Rico and are happy to meet with them to share our experience on a one-on-one later if you're interested. And so, those $1.6 billion that are committed to the San Juan metro region are pretty much directly to the reconstruction of our infrastructure, right? Roads as well as water infrastructure are pretty much on the top of the list. But unfortunately, only 3.32% of those funds have been spent. Some of it, of course, have been allocated, but only 3.3 have been spent, which is a problem for an island that desperately need immediate action from government agencies, local municipalities to immediately bring some level of stability. Next. So this is the area, this is the San Juan Bay Estuary. I call this the study area, right? This is right in the middle of the metropolitan region. 78% of it is urbanized, and I also say that it's impermeable, which means that we are sort of in trouble in a way, but also offers home to 25 critical and endangered species. So it's also an area that is high, it has a high ecological value. 33% of the protected mangrove forest of the entire island is actually located within this study area. So it has, it is very important, and that for that reason, it has been included as part of the National Estuary Program to make sure that the agencies, the 8 municipalities that are part of this study area are paying attention to this water quality restoration plan that has been developed through science and through a consensus with the local scientific communities. So this program, for example, was created in 1994. In 2000, the Comprehensive Conservation Management Plan, which has like specific actions with actors or players, stakeholders, it also specifies the amount of money that is needed to carry out those actions, was developed back then, and it has been revised throughout the years. And we are actually currently in the process of conducting a revision of the entire CCMP, how we call it, which is the Comprehensive Conservation Management Plan, to make it absolutely relevant to the needs and the challenges we're currently facing. Next. So we support the work through a very a programmatic vision that tells the community we're here to provide a complementary support, right? We have local leaders, we have NGOs that are doing their job, we have municipalities, the state government, the federal government, but we act as a convener. And as such, we provide several platforms for those actions from individual organizations or entities to sort of like convene and work towards the common goal, which is the restoration of the estuary system. Next. And this is our mission, and it's to restore and conserve the quality of the natural waters of the San Juan Bay Estuary ecosystem as a sustainable axis of social and economic development. We've been pushing forward all the actions to support that mission, and that in a way also supports the development of proposals and explains, where we're going. An example of this is our current proposals to FEMA to support some areas that were devastated by Hurricane Maria. Whatever we do is actually towards this mission. We don't work with other areas that are probably commonly addressed by other proposals. We work to support the integrity and to restore the integrity of the waters that were impacted by these atmospheric events. Next. And as I mentioned, there is this plan that is highly structured and very, it's like a Bible, right? And I think this is an element that has to be in place for anyone interested in having access to federal funds. When you have when you want to be part of the reconstruction, you really have to have strong science behind the proposals you're pushing or you're presenting, and it has to be based on studies. It has to be something that it has been incorporated by local agencies as well as by stakeholders. So I think this is a critical element of any proposal that could be developed. Next. So as a nonprofit organization, we are 501c3. Other national estuary programs are, probably part of a state agencies or other are part of a foundation. But we are a nonprofit organization that really helped us in being super nimble and move as quickly as possible right after the hurricane. For example, we were able to continue to conduct the water quality monitoring in the water bodies of the metropolitan region, even though state agencies weren't operating. So the work, the data that we raised immediately after the hurricane really helped helped in developing proposals from state agencies and also federal agencies. So this is very important, is for the nonprofit sector to continue to play a critical role to adapt to the circumstances. Of course, we had a whole work plan in place right when Maria hit us in 2017, but we quickly changed it, asked for support from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to help us amend the work plan so we could provide the relief that was needed. So next. So we received funds from the Clean Water Act, Section 320, and this is where we are born, right? This is the section that defines the National Estuary Program. And we've been using this source of funds with the support from EPA, from the Environmental Protection Agency, to support the platform of the National Estuary Program. It also supports recurring activities, right? It doesn't necessarily support specific projects, but the work, the convener role that we are playing. We also use these funds to provide some seed funding. So we motivate other agencies and municipalities to, work with us and then have them have stronger proposal for them to leverage funds and also develop or construct whatever infrastructure needs to be constructed. Next. As I mentioned, we're part of a National Estuary Program, and this slide shows the 27 estuary programs that are part of the continental US, and we are in the Caribbean. That network also helped us in having access to congressional leadership. Of course, we're part of the Association of National Estuary Program. So, I mean, if you want to have access to these funds, you got to be in contact with this congressional leadership. As a Commonwealth, we do not have a strong leadership at the congressional level. So we have to really work with other jurisdictions to have our voice heard and our vote as well. So next. So we also use Clean Water Act state revolving funds, particularly for specific projects, right? Projects that have a beginning and an end, and projects that are supporting the development of resilient infrastructure. As I mentioned, we are not the responsible for putting together those big public works, but we do make sure that those responsible are following a plan or platform. So for this reason, we've been developing plans such as the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan, which is the first multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan ever developed for Puerto Rico. So we're leading that effort. And so 8 municipalities are part of that plan. We're also developing now the green and blue infrastructure for stormwater management for the entire region. Moving forward, a walkable urban estuary plan. Let's see what else. We're also putting, we've been conducting the illicit discharge detection and elimination project, which has detected and eliminated around 80% of the illicit discharges that we've been detecting through a task force. So, you know, we've been using these funds in a way that sets the stage for others to jump in and do the right thing and invest wisely in resilient infrastructure. Next. And finally, the bipartisan infrastructure law, a law that was just passed in November of 2021. And this law really pushes agencies and states and us, because we're part of that law. The National Estuary Program is part of that law for the next 5 years to focus on building infrastructure that is resilient in the face of climate change, right? And it also pushes us to address the disparities of those environmental justice communities. So I think I'm actually looking forward to the results from this it's also called bill from the bipartisan infrastructure law, because it's going to deliver great results from the different jurisdictions. Next. And so just to close, as I mentioned, I think it's pretty important to have a science-based approach and to really support the access to federal funds. It's important to identify those sources of funds that will be supporting the platform, right? The programmatic work that you do. So you continue to implement your mission or achieve your mission. But at the same time, you need to identify, specific sources of funds from corporations, from foundations that will help you develop or implement specific projects. At this time, I think it's important to lead. Never be shy. Just make sure that you are really supporting the work at the highest level. So that's all from my part. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my experience.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Great hearing from you. Inspiring work, inspiring words today. Now, we're going to open it up really quickly to some questions. If anybody has any questions for Brenda this morning, we'd love to, or this afternoon, this evening, I'm sorry, we'd love to take them from you. It looks like we've got some in the chat right now. The first one comes from Jason. Jason says, Brenda, what stakeholders did you have to engage with outside of your organization to position yourself correctly?
I'm trying to read the what stakeholders did you have to engage with outside of your organization's position? Stakeholders, the diaspora. I think that's a great question, Jason. We, before coming to this position, I had just co-founded the National Puerto Rican Agenda. So I had a very strong network of Puerto Ricans that were in political positions, elected positions, but at the same time, leaders from foundations. And that really helped me in informing them the real impact and the real need in the island, and so that I think that also that congressional leadership from Puerto Ricans, right, like the Congresswoman Nidia Velázquez, really helped us a lot in having those data, science data that we had to be communicated in a very structured way, so we could, bring the federal funds back to Puerto Rico.
Thank you for your answer, Ms. Brenda. I got a question for you, and I think you touched on it definitely in your presentation, the strong community kind of support, right? Just out of curiosity, what does that scene look like in terms of the community and your local supporters and the general public and kind of them getting involved? How does that look?
How does it look to get them in, to involve them in the process? I mean, it's a challenge, as I mentioned to you. There is no precedent. People are used to just, obtaining the funds for infrastructure, but no one is used to seeing including the projections, right? So it's important to develop with that in mind, with the fact that the climate is recurrently bad and is recurrently impacting negatively the stability of islands such as ours, and I think that it's a challenge for entities such as ours, because we are not only pushing for recommendations, but also teaching them on what's happening and why they need to sort of like refocus and develop and put different priorities on their list.
Definitely. Again, thank you so much for your time. And if you want to learn more about the amazing work that Brenda and her team are putting together, you can always visit their website. That's estuario.org. Again, estuario.org. Thank you again. As we move forward with our gathering here, we're going to move on to our next speaker, who's going to be bringing us up to date on the outreach work of the network. I'd like to welcome and bring in, if you will, we're reaching out to CSIN Steering Committee member, Jen Valulis. You there with us, Jen?
Yes,
There
I
you
am.
are.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jen Valulis. I am the executive director for the St. Croix Environmental Association in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I'm on the CSIN steering committee and as well as the member outreach committee. So I'm here to share some updates and also to make an ask of you all tonight. Currently, the primary goal of the outreach committee is to grow this network. We have been strategizing about how to do this, such that we include representation across all geographic areas and including different sectors in each of those areas. We know that we have some geographic gaps in our network and would like to not only fill those gaps, but include robust representation from all sectors and all regions. So we've given ourselves a very ambitious, but we think achievable goal of adding 50 new organizations by the end of this year. That's only 2.5 months away, which I know gives Liz a small heart attack when I say, but I think we can do it. We currently have a little over 70 signatories, including a couple of new ones to contribute towards those 50. So we're asking for your help in reaching this goal because we all benefit from a larger and diverse network, as Jason spoke about earlier. A diversity of organizations makes for a rich and a deep understanding of the needs of all islands. So you all are already here in this space attending this meeting, which I hope means that you are already part of the network. If not, it likely means that your organization is a great candidate for joining this network and signing on to the declaration. If you have signed, please consider encouraging other organizations that you collaborate with to join us. If you know of an organization that might be a good fit, please invite them to join us or let us know and we would be happy to reach out to them. So we have our slideshow. Joining the network starts by signing the Climate Strong Island Network Declaration, which you can find on the landing page of our website, which is climatestrongislands.org. I believe it was in the chat earlier. And that's what, when you get there, that's what this slide shows you. And the declaration is in Spanish and English. Once you have read the declaration and are ready to sign and join, there's a button to press that says complete the signatory form, fill out this short form and submit. So if we can do the next slide. This is what the form looks like. It's very short. It's very easy. We want to know who you are and why this is important to you, so we can, as a network, better serve all of us. If this doesn't work for you, you can also send an email with the subject line, signing the Climate Strong Islands Declaration in all caps, to Elizabeth@climatestrongislands.org. This is on the website, so if you, I know I might be going a little fast, but you can find the information there. And you can attach your logo. So if you haven't read it recently, in a nutshell, the declaration, which is what you would be signing on to, sets forth a set of principles, challenges, and opportunities faced by island communities in the US and calls on federal and state government agencies, the private and nonprofit sectors, academia, the philanthropic community, and the general public to help these communities respond to the climate crisis in an effective way. So once you've signed and agreed to this declaration, what does that mean? Next slide, please. So you are part of this network that includes these other signatories, which includes a diverse group of organizations, members from large and small organizations across civic, private, and governmental sectors. Jason, again, spoke a little bit earlier about what that means to be part of this network generally and where we're going. Now, I can tell you from my own experience as a director of a very small NGO, we only have 2 staff members, on a small island with territorial status, so no voting representative, no voting rights for president, very limited organizational resources, that being part of this network has meant the elevation of our voice from one that has largely been marginalized to now be a voice of influence. The most obvious and sort of direct example of this was being able to contribute to the process of developing the policy framework that we heard about earlier tonight, and which we expect to eventually direct some very much needed resources to addressing climate crisis on our island. Being part of this network has meant connections to other organizations facing similar challenges as us, and learning of potential solutions or even roadblocks that others have faced. And it has meant connections to very different organizations with different tools and resources that can be shared, and the opportunity to interact with experts that I wouldn't otherwise. So to close, although each island is unique and we face many of the same climate issues, our uniqueness adds to the texture and depth of our ability to find and advocate for solutions. So that's why it's so important for us to continue to grow this network and why I encourage anyone that is interested in joining to do so and encourage others to join us as well as we continue to build this network. So the final slide, please. This is contact information for our email and for Liz, who is our facilitator. So if you have any difficulties getting us through the website, this is how you can reach us otherwise. And we can tell you more about the network. We can connect with other folks and answer any questions you have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jen. And again, great information and ways that we can get others involved with this amazing network. Please do just that. We've got lots of homework today. And this is fun homework. So this is good stuff for me. Now, what an amazing gathering we've had today with great updates, lots of great stuff to look forward to. It's time for us to kind of wrap things up. And of course, we have the optional session after we do close things up. So you're more than welcome to stay and join us for that. You can also check out the chat box. We've got tons of links in there, thanks to Mickey and everyone who's been dropping them in through the entire gathering as well. So you can stay updated and maybe have some reference points as well for further conversations. Now, right now, I'd like to welcome our CSIN Steering Committee Co-Chair, Dr. Austin Shelton, to wrap things up.
Hafa everybody. My name is Austin Shelton, and it is an honor to continue serving our Climate Strong Islands Network as your steering committee co-chair. And I want to thank my colleague Lirio Marquez for opening us up today and sharing her inspiring words and keeping our network going together. Also want to say a special thank you to the Ocean Foundation, to the Global Island Partnership, and to High Street Strategies that you've heard from earlier in this gathering, and to get all of their amazing updates. Also, thank you to our Bright Spot presenters that opened us up today to learn about Puerto Rico and our other islands. And the really important thing that I wanted to say today at this gathering is that sometimes we hear about islands being isolated, that we're so far apart from each other. But I think that through networks like the Climate Strong Islands Network, that's just not true. We are here together. We are stronger than ever. We are climate strong because islands continue to gather together and to work on these very important issues. It's amazing that we now have this really important policy document with the 7 key issues: watershed planning, disaster and resilience recovery, and marine planning, blue economy. These are things that are going to be moving us forward, and as we continue to gather together as strong islands, we hope to make a difference in these issues. So please keep coming back, keep gathering with us. We hope to see you in person sometime next year, that we can have our first in-person gathering since we last met in Puerto Rico. So thank you very much, everybody, again, for being here, and our hearts go out to our brothers and sisters over in Puerto Rico and in the East Coast for all of the storms that you've been suffering through with Fiona and Ian. We really are thinking and praying for you, and if there's anything that we can do from the Pacific to help in solidarity with you, please reach out to us and let us know. We've gone through our share of super typhoons and storms, and we know it's never easy through our recovery efforts, but we are climate strong, and we will continue to get through this and move forward to ensure that we have a future for our islands and we have a sustainable global future. Sijus Masi, and thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shelton, and thank you again very much to everybody for joining us here. Now, before we dismiss and get into our informal session, the post show, as I call it, I'd like to ask everybody who's capable of doing so, if you could turn on your cameras, we'd love to get a big group shot before we wrap things up officially here. If you could turn on your cameras, there you go. You spent the gathering fixing your hair. I know I did. And we're gonna get together here. Feel free to smile. Okay, I'm gonna have them move Jason and me separated here on screen because we look too much alike right now, Jay. They're gonna think we're twins, bro. I'm telling you. Okay,
well, that's good news
nice.
for me.
Yeah, don't do that. It's not a good thing. Got ex-wives, Jason. I've got ex-wives you got to worry about. Okay. All right, here we go. We could all just kind of look in, get your smile on. All right, we're gonna do one more. Good. All right. Things have been caught. Thank you so much, everybody, for the wonderful smiles and a great way to either wrap up our day or to get it started, in our case, out here in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. We're now going to segue into a very special informal discussion point here. I'm going to turn it back over to Liz, and she'll handle and facilitate the rest of today's festivities. On behalf of everyone here at the University of Guam Center for Island Sustainability, the entire Climate Strong Islands Network, thank you so much for joining us. It's just Masi, and I turn it on over to Liz.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Kyle. And once again, I just want to give a huge shout out to the University of Guam. They have been our partner for the last 3 gatherings, and what a pleasure it has been having them produce these gatherings. They add an extra level of excitement and just enthusiasm, and especially since we've been on Zoom, many of us for the last 2, almost 3 years now, it really makes a difference. So Kyle, Miracle, Lawrence, thank you so much for helping us to produce this program today. We really appreciate it. Hello, for those who have joined the call kind of midstream, I'm Liz O'Kk Von Batten, and I'm the CSIN Network Facilitator. I am based out of Washington, DC, so very happy to be seen here in the morning for many others. As Kyle mentioned, we are having a informal just conversation that we, are hoping that you will share some of your thoughts in terms of, either in the chat or just live via raising your hand. What is on your mind tonight? Maybe why you came to the gathering, if there was a pressing issue for you, or if you just have some comments about some of the information that you heard tonight. I know, all of the presentations were informative and probably shed light on what we've been doing in 2022 as a network and where we're going in 2023. I think I do want to reinforce that per the comments from Lirio, from Jason, Matt and Nora, Jen, and the reference that Brenda gave for why Estuario is part of this network. What we are hoping to do going into 2023 is to continue to drive financial resources to local organizations and make sure that those dollars are going where they're needed most. Make sure that we are continuing our policy work, in fact, that will continue to ramp up. And we would love to have many of you involved as we reach out to federal legislators and administration officials. And then, and I think, most importantly in all of this is the peer-to-peer engagement that we get to do, both through these gatherings, through other informal sessions that we have and will be ramping up, and frankly, in partnership with our partners at the Global Island Network, some of whom are on tonight. So thank you for gathering with us, as well as Local 2030 Island Partnership. So we're really glad to have you here. I think with that, for those of you who would like to stay on, you're welcome to unmute yourself if you don't have background noise. And I will say I'd like to, if we're all comfortable with that, kind of kick off with a question as to, as I referenced before, what's the biggest challenge that your organization would like to see support for as you think about, kind of why you're here tonight, what CSIN could maybe help you with locally or help you with regionally if you're working with some partners collectively. So a question for you to think on. Again, if you'd like to give an answer or you want to pop something in the chat, we'd love for that. Otherwise, if you do have a pressing topic that you'd like to discuss, feel free to raise your hand via your reaction button down on the menu bar. So I'll just give it a minute or two. And I will mention, so that as we're considering that question and thinking maybe about others, I had the pleasure of being behind the scenes tonight. And I will say what was extremely exciting was to see where everyone was coming from who joined this call. Geographically, we were all over the map. We had, well, actually Representative Sheila Babuda is still on from Saipan, Erin Darrington from CNMI. Also, you know, Laura Cam, thank you for calling in from Hawaii. Love seeing you here. Our own Mickey Epipson. I'm sorry, Mickey, I'm still getting used to your married name, is calling in from Palau. We then, of course, had the Virgin Islands represented, Puerto Rico, the Marshall Islands, Guam, of course, on the call. I saw France calling in on behalf of Smilo. So yes, and if I haven't mentioned where you are coming from, please feel free to pop that in the chat as well. I don't mean to leave anybody out, but I'm just quickly surveying the landscape. Oh, Arizona as well. But it's great to have you all here. And again, really appreciate you participating in this call and as part of the network. Oh, and George, I didn't mean to leave out Austin. Okay, so we've got one comment in the chat and from Erin Darrington with CNMI. And she's saying the leading challenge across sectors for her is capacity building to support expanded sustainability and/or coastal resilience planning and implementation. And Erin, if you feel comfortable, if you want to come on video or off of your off of mute, if you want to elaborate a little bit, I would love, especially just knowing your background, would love for people to hear a little bit more.
Sure, Liz, and thank you for making this opportunity possible for us. I'm representing the Office of Planning and Development, but the Commonwealth is very happy to be one of your new signatories. Really great to be able to join this network, particularly at a time that works for everyone. We often end up getting up very early to join these types of calls. But I think, you know, talking about this deluge of federal support, federal funding that we have coming in to help fast track some of the priorities that have been identified, climate adaptation, equity. There are a lot of initiatives underway that need people. They need people to write the grants. They need project managers to manage the grants once we get them. And we are certainly, I can speak for our office personally, we've gotten a lot of federal grants and we are having challenges finding the people with the backgrounds that we need to be able to manage them and to expand our competitiveness for this new BIL funding to seek new opportunities. So I think getting a generation of coastal managers trained up and conversant in resiliency, talking about the cross connection between our environmental and socioeconomic well-being and the need to take urgent climate action now is absolutely critical. And so to whatever degree we can help amplify the lessons learned, the policy advocacy that's coming out of this network and others share that information, I think that would be really beneficial to the folks that are already on the ground and to the, hopefully to the spots that we will be filling moving forward as well.
Thank you so much, Erin, for sharing that. I feel like maybe there are others on the call that would be interested to share a little bit or like reflect a little bit on what Erin is sharing, especially around capacity building. I was wishing that some of the university folks that we had on would stay on because I would be curious as to their response as they're seeing students, you know, come through programs. But I guess any responses from anyone out there? Lirio?
I'm really curious when Erin was talking about capacity building. How are you funding that capacity building? Through grants or from private organizations, or because it's very expensive to create capacity in small, let's say, coastal island communities where not everyone gets to go to university, but you can still develop that capacity because the traditional knowledge is there. but the program is funding it. Or like Jennifer wrote in the chat, or having a buy-in from government. So I'm really curious as to how you do it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think we're still trying to develop a good answer to that question, but some of my colleagues that are on the meeting as well, Lori Paterka, I know has been successful in getting some community capacity building grants. We have Rep. Bobauta, who has been an incredible advocate in working to build community capacity. And I mean, we have organizations that are working on backyard rain gardens, which are highly scalable. So there are many opportunities for engagement that our agency partners are leveraging already. My organization also works with the education partners to help avail of grant funding at the federal level and other levels to try to build these programs out. And we have been successful in getting many of these grants, actually. I think, we've been doing well in that regard. But again, finding folks that want to move to the middle of the ocean to do this type of work, often at salaries that are maybe not as competitive as we'd like, is still a challenge. So that's just one piece, one chip off the iceberg that we're working on, but there's just been tremendous support locally. I see another one of the participants is saying getting the buy-in has been a challenge, and for better or for worse, we've seen 2 super storms in the last 5 years. And I think when you're experiencing that degree of climate disaster regularly, it does build some consensus around the fact that we do need to take these urgent climate actions and build our resiliency as a community now. So that's just sort of the experience that we've been having, and happy to share, what we've been doing, the grants we've been seeking, and maybe see if there are other ways we can try to leverage these resources across this partnership, so that we're not reinventing the wheel, but actually building off of each other's efforts as well. But thank you.
Yeah, I can definitely see a follow-up kind of focused call just where we could get some members online talking about this exact issue, kind of following up on Brenda's conversation, and then Aaron, the one that you're posing as well. That would be great. I guess, Lori, Aaron called you out there, and I'm wondering, do you have any thoughts you want to share, in regard? And then Jen, we'll go to you.
Sure. Can you guys hear me? Because I'm on a new headset and I don't know what it sounds like. Okay, good. Yeah, I've been working on some capacity programs for varying age groups in our community, trying to incorporate both Western science and local cultural science, and trying to pull it all together using college students. And we're currently running a program for 6th graders. And so you have your 6th graders, but that doesn't solve the problem we have right now in this moment. So I'm trying to jump into the high school scene and working very closely with the public school system and also with the local college to create a program that will help to perhaps create a natural resource management pathway for our students at the high school level, which hopefully feeds them into the college, which hopefully feeds them into our next generation of workforce. So I would just share that I have this long vision, but I'm just not sure if it's going to happen fast enough.
That is incredible. Thank you for sharing that. And I feel like, Lirio, that's akin, it sounds like, to some of the work that you've been doing with the Vieques Trust, with kind of grade school to high school to, like you said, Lori, kind of setting up that flow of awareness, education, and professions in these areas. So again, collecting a lot more topics on, like, let's have further conversations about this and share our cross learning. Cool.
I would add
Lori.
one more thing too, which is that I'm also starting a program which we're calling Ocean Conservation Corps, and it's to work with mid-career individuals at the village level to help increase community discussion in a space that's safe and comfortable and what's the word I'm looking for? Not intimidating. Like if you're not in the speak, if you're not in the space and you don't really get it, but you have thoughts and feelings, where do you share that? So I'm trying to create space for that too.
Oh gosh, amazing. Jen?
Yeah, so this is exactly the issue, one of the biggest issues I think we face here, where, we also, there's all these large grants that are coming about federally right now, very much in the environmental justice and the climate, adaptation realm. But we don't have the capacity. We can get them potentially, but we don't have the capacity to carry them out now, and we're doing, we definitely need to have this group because and I'm hearing so many of the same things. We've been as well, kind of amongst the nonprofits and the environmental educators on island, doing the thing to get the pipeline of students so that in, hopefully a couple of years, we're going to have the expertise on island from islanders fill those positions. But we know now, for example, that our environmental oversight agency, the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, has well over 100 openings that they just can't fill. They're funded jobs that are supposed to be managing the environment on, in the Virgin Islands, and they can't fill them because there isn't the expertise, or the salary that they're offering is not adequate, or all of the other things that come along with being an island in a climate crisis, such as our schools and our hospital were destroyed during Hurricane Maria and have not been repaired. And why would you move to an island or come home to an island with those basic necessities not available? So yeah, lots of challenges, beyond just the money and the funding for this.
Yeah. And Lirio, I see your hand up.
Yes, I'd like to ask Lori another question, and that is, have you tried or have you had any luck with technical schools? Because we work with children and youth from very young until high school, and some college students or older younger adults who either are unemployed or have very little employment. But we've tried to reach out to technical schools and we haven't been very lucky with that.
Thanks for your question. We have a technical school here, but it's been in a state of flux for the last 5 or 6 years. And before our Cat 5 storms that we had in 15 and 18, we did have the opportunity to, actually it was in between, to work with the technical school on producing a robotics workshop as a segue to try to bring the concept of underwater research through robotics. And what we did is a train the trainers program, and then those trainers were supported by the Tech Institute, and then the trainers in turn took a group of kids from all 3 of our most populated islands, and then they did this training course, and the idea was to encourage citizen science. And it lasted for a little while, but without the stability of the Technical Institute, it didn't take hold. So I'm looking at and examining the possibility of doing something that replicates that same experience. The technical school is starting to find its home and its foundation, and it has a really good connection now. And I think it's settling. So I think that the timing for this might be coming, but that's as much as I can share at this time.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lori. And I think this is interesting because it dovetails with George. You had some comments in the chat about, kind of different gradations of technical expertise and how to get people involved. It sounds like at different levels, depending on what type of work they're doing within this larger portfolio of resilience work that we've been talking about. And just, it sounds like it goes back to, how to recruit people who aren't currently living on some of the islands that we've been talking about, not only get them physically there, but then up to speed on what's been happening and apply maybe some of their technical background and expertise, but at the same time have a homegrown pipeline of people who are coming up through, trade school, traditional university, other settings where they're being trained to do this work and carry it out as well. So yeah, multi-pronged to say the least. And I'm curious, I know we've got Deanna James, who is on the line, and Deanna, I don't want to call you out, but I see your icon there, and I'm just curious if you would want to offer anything, especially coming from a foundation? I know you and Jen work very closely, as you do with many organizations on St. Croix, but how are you seeing, as maybe a funder of some of these things, where some of the pressures are, where some of the opportunities are? I guess any thoughts on this as we're talking about it?
Yeah, a lot of thoughts, but we deal with this every day because we serve not just as a grant maker, we are a fiscal sponsor. So we work every day to support nonprofits, lower capacity nonprofits in being able to access funding, and then to be able to manage that funding and administer the programs once they get it. And so that's just always an ongoing challenge. And we were talking about, small island states. There's just a lot of constraints here that we have to contend with. And so the fact that we have a lot of money floating around the Virgin Islands, a lot of federal dollars, unprecedented levels of funding, has not changed the fact that, our nonprofits, it's still outside of the reach of a lot of the organizations that could have significant impact if they had more capacity. So for us, it's, we started building a nonprofit consortium, or trying to seed that concept of real intentional collaboration between organizations. So some of the higher capacity nonprofits can begin to build trusting relationships that will allow them to go after funding together. And so they can support each other in accessing those resources. So that's been a huge part of the work that we've been doing. It's just an ongoing challenge because of how small we are. And you can have all the grants in the world, but if organizations can't access them because of their capacity, then it's like not having any funding available at all. And so I think the more that we continue to nurture the relationships we're nurturing with our nonprofits, they're figuring it out. I think we're all figuring it out, and resiliency is a part of our DNA. So necessity is the mother of invention, and I think people are finding ways to access those funds. So I don't know if that answered the question, but that's just some of the ways that we're seeing it, and the opportunities that we're trying to create to have our really small nonprofits overcome some significant hurdles.
Yeah. No, Deanna, that was awesome, especially because you have such, like you said, a kind of a unique model for a community-based foundation, where, as you said, you're a fiscal host, you're also granting money. You also have a huge emphasis on community development, and as you explained, what does that take, especially when you're trying to get all of these different components together. Institutions, academic or nonprofit, in the environmental space, or just community togetherness and organization, and et cetera. So no, thank you for those thoughts. And I mean, it does, I guess maybe my final question for the group, and then if we naturally don't have any other questions, it's okay. We can depart a bit early, but I'm curious, for others, as you kind of reflected on Deanna's comments, do you feel like you have grant making or fiscal sponsorship organizations in your community that are reliable in the ways that Deanna mentioned? And I'm seeing Lori say no, but yeah, curious about where are you seeing any support akin to what Deanna was describing? And if you're not, what are some of the other institutions that you're looking to for that type of support? Or are you just having to kind of create that as you go and hope, that gap kind of fills in over time? Lirio.
there aren't that many, well, in Vieques, there are no other organizations that can be fiscal sponsor for smaller organizations. So we are the organization, but we are facing a big difficulty now because we don't have the capacity to host all of them. And we try to help them get organized, get their 501c3, get their local Puerto Rican exemption. But it's very time consuming work. We are a very small organization. We do projects. We write grants for ourselves. We help others. So we are going crazy right now because after all these, like you were talking about, after all these storms and all of these natural disasters, there's a big need for the organizations to get funding to do their work. But we don't have the capacity to help everyone.
Can I just jump in there? I want to just say that I sit on the Southeastern, it was the Southeastern Council of Foundations. It's now Philanthropy Southeast. And the reason that I joined it was because there are so many really small rural community foundations under that umbrella that I felt like, oh my God, I'm going to find more of us. And that has been my experience. And I can tell you the advocacy we're doing now to national philanthropy is to build more of us, to build more organizations like us, to build capacity in the organizations like yours, Lirio, that are doing it already, but just need to scale up that capacity, because there really is no other way. Like there's a reason that community, the conventional community philanthropy doesn't do what we do, because you genuinely have to love your place, you have to love your people. And money can't be sort of the guiding force for how you work. That is not the case for most of philanthropy. And so and that's a sad reality, but it's a reality that I think the field has yet to contend with. And so I think the answer is for more of us to be able to support more nonprofits. And I can tell you that we oftentimes put ourselves to the side, our needs to the side to support our nonprofits. And when we are in the role of grant maker, we give out grants. We are like, it is almost as if that grant was ours, that we were giving it to ourselves, because our commitment to making sure that our partners are successful is like a core virtue for us. And so my team does a lot of hand-holding to make sure that on our end, we're managing the money and doing all the right things that we have to do to be accountable and to build accountability for our sector, but also that we are making sure that on the implementation side that what the money was intended for is actually accomplished, because that is another way that we build credibility for ourselves to be able to access more resources in the future. So it's a lot of work, but it's necessary in communities like ours. And so what our case is that stop giving organizations just giving money in small communities, build place-based philanthropies that are focused on holistic community development that can provide the kind of breadth of support that we provide to nonprofits, so that they can do all the magical stuff that they do oftentimes with no support, but do more of it.
Lori, I think that struck a chord. You have your hand up.
Yeah, so I've been running in the nonprofit world for the last 20 years, and it's been a variety of different attempts at different nonprofit, but I've been particularly successful with the Friends in the Mariners Trench in this capacity for ocean related stewardship kind of capacity building. But all the things that you just said, Deanna, I was so passionate about trying to help all the other groups that I ended up taking a part-time job at the Mariners Alliance for Non-Governmental Organizations, where I am now the development director. And the whole point of that is to try to do exactly what Deanna's talking about, to try to make it so that your capacity is in the foundation as much as it is on the front line. And so I totally agree with you. And I also have just gone through some really challenging experiences with some funders who decided that I just didn't fit in their agenda after 2 years of trying to actually discuss what could be possible, and like just like laying it all out to them in this beautiful presentation. And it's, you know, it's they get it, but they can't do anything about it because their board has their hands tied. So as much as they want to help or they want to be able to direct funding, they can't. And so I'm at a little bit of a loss as to how to get to the capacity part when we're, you know, we're expected to perhaps carry out these frontline projects without being able to build the capacity first. So if anybody has any secret sauce, I'm listening.
You know, Laura, well, and Deanna, if you had a response, I don't want to cut in. Okay. But I will say, you know, Lori, that is one thing about this network, just to put a plug in for someone who is not here, who had to drop off because similarly, he's on another board that he is helping with development with, but Jason Donofrio from the Ocean Foundation, which of course is our fiscal sponsor for the network, but Jason has been with actually Deanna, another steering committee member, Celeste Connors out of Hawaii, Green Growth. They have been working on our development committee to not only figure out like how we can, as a group, get unrestricted money that then we can immediately grant out to local organizations. You know, that's one aspect of the work. The second is that Jason is always happy to get on the phone and troubleshoot with anybody in the network around development, you know, crises, to just challenges, to thinking short-term, long-term about, you know, how you want to figure out how to exactly, whether it's this funder or another funder, chart a path that is sustainable for the work that you're doing. So I'll just put a plug in for that, and really for anybody on this call, Jason and I are always happy to take your calls and then figure out kind of within the network, are there other people to talk to, or can we offer some direct assistance? So Lori, yeah, happy to follow up with you after this call. Cool. I guess, I mean, I feel like we could talk for a long time here. There is a lot to further discuss, but I also realize it's, as you can see, it's evening in DC and on the East Coast, Puerto Rico, St. Croix. I know some of you are just getting started with your morning, so you may need that second cup of coffee to keep it rolling. But anything else that we want to talk about before we get off the line tonight? Lirio.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for staying for this dialogue. I think it's been a wonderful part of this evening. And I really, I'm very happy that we had this little space to share our experiences. Thank you all. And also, and without offending the men in the audience, I'm very happy that it's mostly women. Yes. Thank you.
Agreed. It's yeah, it is refreshing to have this space to talk about the issues that we did, and also to see so many women in leadership, you know, moving your organizations forward in the mission of this organization. So thank you. It is really an honor to be with all of you tonight. And again, you know, Nikki, who is our communications consultant, popped in the chat earlier, and we'll put it in there again. If you need to be in touch with me, I'm at elizabeth@climatestrongislands.org, which climatestrongislands.org is also our website. So if you need any more information, just generally about, you know, national policy framework that we talked about tonight, the declaration, see who else is in our network, as well as just get some bios on some of our steering committee members, because obviously Lirio, Jen, Deanna are on our board, and you can read more about them there. But then, of course, you know, we had a couple other people mentioned tonight, and feel free to look at their bios, and too, if you like connections to them, happy to do those intros as well. And George, I see your hand raised.
I just wanted to support Lirio's comment of I have been, I was trying to see, there's a few people that may have crossed paths with me, but in the last 5 years, in all my ocean talks that I'm humbled and get to do, I frequently hold up my keys at the end and shake them and go, I don't know what clock you guys look at, but 10,000 years, 50,000 years, good old boys have been running this show. When I've been an activist for 40 years, when I would go to meetings, it was always about 8 or 9 to 1 women to men in environmental events. I would hold my keys up and say, women and children are going to save the planet. And I agree with the Dalai Lama, who says, when 51% of our countries are led by women and our CEOs are women, we will have a different planet. So I applaud all of you ladies today.
Thank you. Thank you for that, George.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well,
thank you guys for your mother spirit that's going to save us, I think.
Oh, well, again, I mean, just having everybody here, having everyone so supportive of this work and each other, I'm excited to see where we go in 2023. And I hope all of you will be along for this journey because it only makes our work richer. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. With that, Kyle, Miracle, I'm going to hand it back over to you to kind of close things out technically, but again, we'll have this conversation recorded and Miggy will have it available for you in the next week or two. So look for that as we send it out to all of you. Thank you so much again for joining us tonight.